Okay.
Hello and welcome to another segment of Elder Abuse Awareness Virtual Coalition. My name is Elisa William, and today I have the pleasure of talking with Director of the Orange County Office of the Aging, Anne-Marie Maglione, Professor of Psychology and Director of the Center of Aging and Disability Policy at Mount St. Mary College, Dr. Larry Force. And our special guest today is Sandy Altman, who is an attorney that specializes in elder issues. So welcome, Sandy.
Thanks very much, Lisa.
Yeah. So Anne-Marie, I know before we got on this call, you were mentioning some changes and stuff that are happening. And I was wondering if you would like to share a little bit about some of the newer scams that are coming on before we get into the legal issues.
Thank you, Lisa, and thanks for facilitating this. You know, we've said this in the past that this is a unique way that we are starting to assist older adults and their family and friends to address the really epidemic issues of elder abuse and scams. And you know, during this pandemic, we can't get out to see people, so we are virtually coming to you. But we want you to know that we are there. Our eyes and our ears are still on the ground looking at things, and we're going to help you with it. This is a really difficult time for elder abuse because everyone is sheltering and isolating, and there's social distancing, which of course we all have to do and we want you to do because we want to come out of this as healthy as possible. But there's 33 million Americans that do not have a paycheck, and everyone on Social Security gets a paycheck the first of the month, and the scammers know this and they're desperate. So some of the new ones that I've just gotten that I wanted to share with you is know that Social Security will never ever call you. They will send you a letter if they need to contact you. They just won't call you and say, hey, listen, because this is one of the new ones. Hey, listen, your Social Security check is not coming this month because of COVID. We've had to use a lot of money for research and test kits, but we can give you some stimulus money. We just need some information from you. That's just not going to happen. Don't believe it. Hang up. There's a couple of other ones that they're going to call saying that they need you to give a couple of dollars to help with COVID research. You can give as little as $10. Just give us your credit card and we'll charge you $10. That's not going to happen. People will reach out to you and ask you, again, for a donation, that one of your relatives has contacted COVID. They can't afford to pay. They need somebody to help them pay. And they're very good at it, because then they'll say, well, what relative? And they'll say, well, your grandchild. And they'll say, Timothy? And they'll be like, yes, it's Timothy. He can't talk right now because he's really so sick. You need to know none of those are true.
If I could just interrupt for a second, you know, one government agency that does call is unemployment, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they will, you know, they'll send emails and all that, but there's some things that they call about, and they are supposed to tell you the date that you applied. That's how they identify themselves. So it gets a little tricky. Of course, you know, the government's supposed to make things easier, but not always do they succeed in that. So if you're applying for unemployment and there's a follow-up call, ask what the date is that you applied and know that date. So
and that's very important information. And Alyssa, thank you for moderating this, and Anne-Marie, as always, it's great to facilitate this.
yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I have to tell you this is such a great group. Right. So thanks for inviting me.
Well, we're glad that you're here. I mean, you can see the theme. The theme is that we've come together, okay, in this as a response to COVID-19 to deliver a message, but not just a talking head message, to be able to show people that, you know, they don't have to do this alone. As Anne-Marie has indicated, this elder abuse issue, it's the epidemic that meets the pandemic. You know, it's the epidemic of elder abuse that meets the pandemic of COVID-19. Here we are. And the fact is, we have what we started off as an informal discussion has not only been recognized and appreciated by the county executive and government agencies in Orange County, but also, Emery, through your connection with Greg Olson as the director of the New York State Office for Aging. You know, not only being one of our guests, but really being a real true supporter of this. So we started in Orange. Next thing you know, we're having discussions with state agencies. Next thing we know, through the connection with Tim Murphy and Sharon Mary Cohen, we're having discussions with national agents. And we've picked particular topics. And Sandy, the reason you're here today is to have a discussion. And for those of you that don't know Sandy, it's Sandy Altman, as he's been introduced. Elder care attorney, absolutely. Senior advocate, absolutely, absolutely. Sandy and I collaborate on a podcast called Age Loudly. You'll find him on Tuesdays during the month in the local newspaper. So you really, truly are the person that we would want sitting here, both from your legal background and from your passion. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what people would need to know at this point regarding elder abuse and the law, because that's the voice that you're bringing to the table. So if somebody said to you, as I'm saying to you now, if we were going to start a conversation about elder abuse and the law, where would you start?
That's a great question, Larry. You know, the various frauds that Anne-Marie mentioned are really important because they're really all coming to the surface now. Everyone's worried. Everyone's, you know, the information that's been coming out is so mixed. People are confused, and seniors are always a prime target anyway. Seniors are often home. Now more of them are home. So it's really essential. I've had clients over the years come into my office and talk about abuse from all kinds of sources, whether it's financial abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. And one thing I wanted to mention was that though Anne-Marie was talking about things you might get calls from, a lot of elder abuse comes from, unfortunately, family members. And I've had a bunch of experience with that because people don't know what to do. You know, if it's a call, they know to hang up or say, "Oh, you want a donation? Write to me." If it's a charity that talks about injured children and other things that are supposed to, you know, tug at your heartstrings, all charities can be checked out at the Attorney General's office on the web. My advice to people is don't pledge anything, don't give anything over the phone. But the most troublesome one is family members, okay? And, you know, now you're gonna have families where there'll be some relatives who are working, but most aren't, okay? And as Larry mentioned, seniors often are the only ones who always get that government that government check, and family members know that. People are very reluctant to report family members, okay? And I've had a while ago, I had like a whole family come in and say, you know, our brother is emptying out the bank accounts of our parents, you know, and brought the parents in. The mother said, "I don't want my son going to jail." Okay, that's not always what happens. Okay, it's not, you know, and this is why we have adult protective services. There's they can't arrest anyone. They can send it over to the DA's office, but there's other things that they can do. Sometimes it's a matter of, you know, someone from the county going and speaking with that family member to put fear of God in him or her and can work it out. you have to be sort of brave about it, because if that family member is not stopped, he or she will continue abusing you as a senior, and then possibly move on to others too. So don't be shy. Things can be worked out, and don't be a victim. You know, just because you're a certain age, it doesn't mean your life is over and can be controlled by someone else. You got to stand up for yourself, and that's sort of one of the things that we really advocate. Your age doesn't make you any less of a person, any less of a citizen. Doesn't take away any of your rights. A lot of times people are afraid when someone says, "Oh, I'm going to make sure you end up in a nursing home." Unless they're your legal guardian, they cannot do that. Okay. Remember, you have your rights. Remember that you can and should stand up for yourselves. And also, you have us to help support you. So you have our contact information. We'll give it to you again. But this group is filled with people who can help you. So that's my main message.
Yeah, and Sandy, you brought up a really important point that unfortunately a lot of scams and elder abuse and all various types of elder abuse are at the hands of a loved one and a relative. And for every case that's reported, 24 reasons that they do that.
Okay, something just happened with the sound, Emery.
We'll fix that. The reason that they do that is because, exactly like you said, they just don't want to get them in trouble. They want it to stop, but they don't want to get them in trouble. So if you are thinking that there is a case, call Adult Protective Services. You can report it anonymously. So if you're a neighbor and you're seeing maybe your neighbor's son is coming and taking his mom to the bank all the time. A lot of times bank tellers will say, hey, you know, large amounts of money are being taken out. So they're kind of gatekeepers, being aware of this. Adult Protective Services can do a report on it. And that number is 845-291-2800. And they have to investigate every report that's made. Again, you don't have to give your name. So if you are a family member, you're feeling uncomfortable about it. And sometimes, you know, like Sandy said, you just go and put the fear of God in them. And maybe they're just, you know, they're getting caught up, they're getting desperate, they haven't had a paycheck in 9 weeks. We get all that, but it doesn't make it correct. If you don't want to go that route, if you're a little bit concerned, you can give us a call at New York Connects, which is 845-615-3710. We can help you. We can walk through it. We work with Adult Protective Services very closely. And Sandy is my vice president for our advisory board. So Sandy, your legal expertise is invaluable. So I appreciate everything that you do.
Thanks. Thank you, Anne-Marie. And I really appreciate the fact that I'm on your board too. I think you're one of the hardest working people in the state. So
I thank you.
I definitely agree with that, and that is very true, Anne-Marie. I mean, you and I have had discussion privately and publicly. I mean, not only through the state of New York, but really through the country, and looking at the AAAs. You and your office, you know, are present. You know, and I think that was even the recognition last week by the county executive gives testimony to the fact that it's not, I mean, what you and your office staff have done to respond to this, because that's really the focus of what we're all about, that people do not have to do this alone. And the fact is that they have access to services, they have access to our network. Look at the people we're bringing to the table with the expertise. Today, Sandy. You know, the fact is, if there's an elder abuse issue or there's a concern, with a sense of confidentiality, they can reach out to you. They can reach out to Tim Murphy. I think what I'd like to do is, Sandy, talk to us what you would consider to be a good outcome. Somebody, you know, without any, obviously, with focusing on confidentiality, can you talk about cases, just in general, of the types of dialogue you're having with families and individuals surrounding legal issues with elder abuse and how they've been resolved? because these things can be resolved.
Um, Sometimes they can and sometimes they can't. But that's part of my message before. They can never be resolved if you don't stand up for yourself, or someone doesn't. I Recently, I got a call from uh, um, a friend of mine who was involved in one of the most horrific elder abuse cases, in the sense that it was a family member. He was armed, threatened his parent, uh, um, harassed the siblings, and the police were sort of blasé about it, which is one of the things that's going on now. A lot of people have guns. Um, and uh, there was an order of protection which they were able to get once they reported it to the police. Sometimes that's not worth more than the paper it's written on, and sometimes it is, but it's a good first step. Some of the people in the family weren't blood related. They were, um, uh, significant others of people in the family, and they weren't covered by that, and that's who were being threatened. Uh, um, and the son with the guns, he basically said, can't do anything, can't take my guns. Well, that was wrong. Okay. Actually, the judge ordered the police to go in and confiscate all his weapons. Okay. He did say to one of his siblings, well, I can always get more guns, which is true, but he was scared enough not to do that. And ultimately he said, I'm going to fight this in court, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when it came to court, he backed down, and they were able to get, agreements on various things. Order protection, permanent. Okay. It was, and part of it was they were looking for psychiatric help, which is another part of this. Most of the time, people who do this kind of thing think they'll never get caught. And that's one of the problems. Okay. That's why we're always putting it out there, that this is something, it's a crime. People can go to jail for this for a long time. In certain cases, there are repercussions. You may never ever be able to work again if you have criminal records. And people have to know this. And this is sort of part of our job to get that out there. If you're tough, or have some people who are being tough on your behalf, whether it's a lawyer or APS or Officer of the then you can get through this, and you deserve to have peace of mind, especially when you get older. Okay. Mm-hmm. You've been, working throughout your life. You've done all this stuff, and you can't be a victim. You can't let yourself be a victim. And if you persevere, 9 times out of 10, maybe more, you'll get a good resolution. You want to be left alone. You want to have your life. You want to have that quality of life.
I just want to say this, as you're talking, one of the things that I started to think about is that the three of us represent, different pathways. Anne Marie, agency representative. You, legal. Me, clinical. So we've all had people come to our table based upon different issues, whether it be, a law, whether it be looking for resources, or it be the emotional. And the thing that we always wanted to be able to highlight is that elder abuse is not just physical. it's emotional, it's financial.
Yes.
And one of the things that the three of us definitely know is that although people know that they're being violated, there's a sense of embarrassment, there's a sense of stigma. I've had situations and conversations where people know that the grandchild is definitely financially, in their world, and they're doing wrong things in their world. But they're hesitant to reach out because they're concerned that the grandchild will then, the repercussions that you just talked about, the fact that, you could be arrested, you could go to jail. So, Emery, what do you recommend in a case like that? Here you pick up the phone, and agency, as an agency rep, you and Tim, and somebody talks to you about the fact that there's been a financial violation, but they're hesitant. I know what I do from the clinical part, encouraging them to take care of themselves and empower themselves. But from a, real life agency response, how do you walk the person through to even get Sandy or somebody that's based in the legal world to the table?
It's difficult. And what we've been saying all along, which is why we have this platform, is that awareness and education are really the key to eradicate this insidious disease. And it is a disease. So we are training people to, when we talk about if somebody's bringing, if the grandson's bringing grandma to the bank every other day and she's pulling out $5,000 each time, the bank teller is going to notify somebody about that there's some weird activity. It really does take a village for everyone just to kind of watch out for everybody. I will tell you, St. Luke's Hospital has been incredible. Somebody goes into St. Luke's not feeling well. Well, guess what? They're seeing bruises on them. They're just acting very jittery. They're very nervous. Dan Maughan is the vice president there. He's incredible. He's done a lot of elder abuse awareness education with us. He continues to do that. So it's really educating. It's educating the public. It's educating the hairdressers. It's educating the grocery clerk. But you mentioned a good point. There's the emotional part of it. So where we can say, we find out about it and we can say, we're going to help you with X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? She doesn't want to mess up Thanksgiving. That people aren't going to be coming to Thanksgiving because everybody's mad at each other. We have support groups that we talk to them. And what we try to do is we just try to empower the person that because they tend to think that, okay, now I did this to my family because I was being greedy and, my grandson needed this money and I just blew my family up. And what we do is we try to explain, you did not blow your family up. You are the victim. And we can have this conversation and we can pull this family back together again when you realize that your grandson needs to kind of grow up and not be a criminal. And that's what he's doing. And, you don't have to press charges, but you want to make sure it stops. So that's what we do. It doesn't always work because it's a really emotional thing. Some people are feeling like, you know what, it's worth it. If he just doesn't do it anymore, I'll be okay. We'll let everything lie. Everything will be okay. But if I say something, although I'll be okay with it, my other children aren't going to be okay with it. The emotional part is a huge, huge piece to deal with.
Henry, one of the things that you mentioned about the banks reporting certain things and at the hospital also is, and this is something that most people don't know, but New York is probably the only state that does not have mandatory reporting for elder abuse. Those people in different positions who must report child abuse under the law have no obligation to report elder abuse. And this is something that, for one reason or another, our legislature has never passed. It's been talked about a lot, and maybe, and I'm not saying it's only a political thing, but maybe when now politicians are sort of realizing that seniors vote, maybe it will pass. But we don't have that, and we should.
Mhm.
And I want to mention that because in our legislature, everyone who holds a seat in the House runs for election every other year. I mean, every 2 years, okay?
Mhm.
Which means they are always campaigning. They always want to please their constituents. So let them know.
Yeah.
And if I could just shift over a little, there's something else that came up in the legislature that this year that I want people aware of because it's a big change in Medicaid. Now, I think Larry mentioned I do write for our local paper here. It's Times Hill Record. And one of the articles I wrote over the last couple of months talked about the budget and how they're trying to cut down the deficit. Of course, now it's all blown up because of everything that they've had to spend on. But one of the things they looked at is cutting down on Medicaid expenses, and it was promised that whatever changes there were, it would not reduce the number of people who are eligible for Medicaid. Who gets Medicaid? It's largely seniors and the disabled, okay? People who need it most. And that formed this committee that did a whole thing on this. And another article I wrote was, yeah, this pandemic is on everyone's mind. Watch out for other stuff. People who are trying to take advantage, like the people we're talking about who try to defraud seniors. And I also talked about politicians or people in office who might try to get things through because no one's paying attention. Well, that actually turned out it happened. Okay. Now, without getting into too much depth, Medicaid eligibility is it's needs driven. It looks at people's income and their assets. Okay, the assets you can have are pretty low, and so sometimes when we plan, if it's for nursing home, you can't give away all your money to your kids and still be eligible. Okay, there's penalties for that. But for years and years in this state, if you were in need of home Medicaid or community Medicaid, you can shift your assets. Okay, which is one of the ways that people who really needed help but couldn't. Home care can cost sometimes as much as nursing home if you have to pay out of your pocket. Okay, if you need around the clock, it costs more. You know, $15,000 to $20,000 every month. That'll wipe out most people in short amount of time. So because community Medicaid, you could shift your assets. You know, in other words, if you need it at home, we could plan for that. They changed that. Okay, while everyone was, you didn't have the governor getting on the TV and talking about changes to Medicaid. Okay, that's not what anyone wanted to hear about. But I think people should know this. They took that right away from those who need Medicaid at home. Okay, they could not shift their assets so they could get Medicaid. Look back period. A lot of people know this. If you're in a nursing home, they look back 5 years to see what you're doing. Well, now, for the first time ever in this state, they have a look back period for home Medicaid, for community Medicaid. It's now 30 months. I'm sorry, 30 or 36. Yeah, it should be 30 months, starts in October. How they're going to do it is a little unsure, but it looks like if you've done this, change assets last couple of years, you may not have even been thinking about Medicaid, might have been helping your kid, they can look at that and you won't be eligible. So this is something that's supposed to start in October. It's going to severely cut the number of people who can get Medicaid, which they promised they wouldn't do. The reason why I'm bringing it up, it's not, it's in October. Talk to your legislator about it. You may think it's not affecting you now, but especially if you're a senior, it may affect you in the future. Because remember, that means being taken care at home. Nobody wants to go into a nursing home. People always say, well, I'll get taken care of at home. Well, now you're going to have to pay out of the pocket.
Can I just say this? Because the point is so well taken. And I think it goes back to what Anne-Marie was talking about at the beginning. It takes a village. And I know that, from your perspective, and we know this about the fact that there isn't a mandatory elder abuse reporting like there is child abuse reporting. But I also know that not all obligations are led by law. A lot of obligations are led by heart. And I think that, when Anne-Marie talks about the hospital, St. Luke's, Cornwall, Dan Mann, Joan Cusa, they have been wonderful supporters and very, very present from day one about the role of the medical center in being part of the solution. I think that, the expertise that you bring to the table is so valuable. And I think what we want our listeners to really understand is that they do not have to do this alone. Your entry into the system, and we've said this from day one about all issues, your doorway into the system is through the county office for aging. Because behind that doorway, they can connect you to so many places, including the legal expertise. It's interesting, we had started this, as we bring this to summary, we had started this in an informal discussion. And in 12 days, through the skill set and talent and team that Alyssa Jo William as our moderator brings to the table, in 12 days, we had our first video cast. We were looking at it for being maybe 10. Now we're at the point of planning and implementing what we're calling season 2, with a specific focus on veterans, with a specific focus on nursing home residents, with a specific focus on families that have individuals with special needs. So I would hope that our listeners would understand that although this is a video cast that runs 30, 45 minutes, it's not a snapshot. We are here. Anne-Marie has demonstrated over and over again, I'm open for business. Okay, Tim Murphy, I'm open for business through Adult Protective Services. And it's all confidential. So I think at this point, we'll bring this component of our segment to a close by first acknowledging you, Sandy, for coming here chock full of so much information. And the fact is there a possibility that you would be able to provide people with a way of being able to contact you directly?
Sure. Now, currently I'm working of counsel to a firm in Walden, here in Orange County, McAdam Fowle, and I'll give that number and my email. The phone number there is 845-778-7588. That's 778-7588. My email is Sanford, it's SANFORD, Altman, ALTMAN, law, Sanford Altman Law @gmail. And once you feel free to contact me. We can certainly talk on the phone or by Zoom or anything else. We're very aware of social distancing and the situation, but people still need our services. Okay, as with all of us, we have to be available, and we are available.
Thank you, Stanford.
I'm sorry?
Thank you, Stanford. I appreciate that. And if you don't remember those numbers, you can call New York Connects, which is 845-615-3710. We can connect you to Sandy. Also, if anybody has any questions that you'd like answered, Elisa is going to give our website. Shoot us an email, and we will make sure that we get your questions answered on our next podcast.
Yeah, and on the legal side of that, I know we've been talking a lot about elder abuse, but people need a lot of services for family members, or if you're a senior yourself. Many think, oh, we can't get this taken care of now. Many think we better take care of this now because of what's going on. You know, whether it's wills, trust. If you have a family member who is ill, who you think they're going to need Medicaid soon, they may need nursing home, they may need home care, you know, don't let that slide because of the pandemic. Take care of stuff.
And that's,
Take care of stuff.
Great, strong message. Alyssa?
Yeah, well, thank you, Sandy, so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure being here. It's a pleasure being here.
Emery,
Thank
Larry.
you.
We'll get this going. Well, I just wanted to thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to the Elder Abuse Awareness Virtual Coalition. And if you want to hear this program again, share it with friends, even comment on it, you can do so by logging on to our website, www.elderabuseawarenessvirtualcoalition.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And when you're on the website, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. We hope you can join us again next week as we continue our conversation on elder abuse awareness. Thank you.